Welcome to Nice Ashes. I'm Mike.
And I'm Nate.
What are we smoking today, Nate?
Well, we're back for the third time is maybe the charm of this Baccarat. I actually didn't even fucking look at this one. It's a Robusto, right?
Maduro. It's a Maduro Rothschild.
Oh, Rothschild's Maduro The Game.
Yes. I illicitly licked the tip before we started, and it was very sweet, and it gave me a little bit of anxiety. I'm not going to lie.
I just illicitly or explicitly licked it. Mike and I are in the same location. We're actually, for the very first time ever, I believe, recording at Nate's studio, both of us in person. Which is fun. I don't think Mike's ever been down here recording. We usually record at his place if we're recording in person.
We do. I'm not sure if we've recorded here before or not.
I don't think so.
Oh, there we go. My memory is not the best.
Oh, what are we drinking, Mike?
The wrong person to ask. We are drinking Kolsch style ale, 4.7%.
From Fair State Brewing.
Oh, there we go.
Down here in the Minneapolis-St. Paul region.
Funnily enough, I asked him about the cigar he didn't know about. He asked me about the beer that I don't know about. I do have to make a complaint about your fair city.
Oh God. I have to make a complaint about this cigar. Okay, what's the complaint about the Fair City? Does this one also smell like like piss?
No, I was singing the praises of Minneapolis, St. Paul, and all these boot companies, and I'll be damned if I can find a pair of boots that fit my feet at any of these stupid stores down here.
There you go.
So internet for the win.
Now, this is a Nate Knows episode. The first initial puffs of this are not fantastic at all. But we'll see what Mike says.
They're not as bad as the Connecticut.
It does have a goofy, funky taste to this one. Thus far that I'm not really digging, but...
It's got that underlying turpentine, and it's got the sweet cap that's trying to cover that up.
Yeah.
Poorly.
Maybe that's why they do the sweet caps on all these.
I don't know how people like them.
I really loved that one that we did. What was it, the really sweet one?
That was a Factory Smokes.
Yes,
sweet.
The Factory Smokes Sweet. That one was phenomenal.
Yeah.
Okay. I feel like it's taken us a little bit longer to get going. Mike and I are having a little bit of a spat because he too now has seen my shiny wrenches that the Midwest Shenanigans ladies saw and were harassing me about.
They're about as shiny as my wrenches because I use power tools.
Manly tools.
Yeah, I use power tools.
Manly tools.
I will say that your screwdrivers are never been used. They have never been used. I can see it from here.
You can't see that. Look at that red one. That one's been used as a pry bar, certainly. Look how bent it is.
Yes. That is the only one that's been used.
I use the orange one mostly, the
multi-bit.
The Husky or the multi-bit. Yeah. But I've been using these ones a little bit.
Sure.
But we're not here to talk about my tools.
Or
are we? Wait, did I institute a no pants rule in my studio? I can't remember. Anyway, here we go. The topic for this one, and I think this one, hopefully, Mike, you'll enjoy, maybe, is we're going to do a taught versus truth edition of going to school in the 90s. So what we were taught versus what the actual truth is.
Well, we both have an advantage here.
Because we both went to school in the 90s.
That's right.
But that's why I did the 90s, and I'm not doing, went to school in the 60s, and they said it was okay to eat lead paint.
Right.
Because I wasn't there. I'm going to go through some of these, Mike, and just, you want to talk about some of them? We'll talk about them. That's what we do on the podcast.
It's way more awkward to do this in person. I'm not.
It is a little bit. It's like, do I look at Mike? Do I look at his microphone? Do I look at the microphone? Do I look at Mike's phone in his pocket that's recording me right now?
Yeah, well, for those who are listening, and maybe you heard the hiccup, my phone is off, but it buzzed, and I'm Mr. Two Phones, so I'm like, oh, which one was it?
The important one or the work one? Okay, so the first thing is, in the 90s, and I don't know if you were taught this specifically, a lot of these things sounded familiar to me. I don't remember every single class I sat in from, kindergarten up through 12th grade, what have you. Chameleons change color to hide from predators. I remember a lot of chameleons and a lot of animated cartoons, things of that nature, where they would change colors a lot to blend in. And they could do like tie-dye colors. And
I remember that.
Miss Frizzle,
Magic
Magic School Bus had a chameleon.
Yep, I believe so. Yeah. I remember a lot of chameleon graphics back in the mid-90s.
Probably had some sweet chameleon pogs, too. I bet you.
I'm guessing so. I know that
sweet holographic chameleon slammer.
Rollerblade themed.
Okay. Yeah. So that's false. They don't really change colors to hide from predators. What they will do is they'll change colors to regulate their body temperature and to communicate with other chameleons.
Interesting.
So I didn't go into too much detail on any of these facts because I've got 3 pages of them. But I can assume from seeing some David Attenborough documentaries and Birds of Paradise who use bright colors to attract mates, I would imagine something similar happens with chameleons, though I don't know. That's pure speculation on my part.
Yes, peacocks.
Most of any kind of male bird is more colorful than the female variety.
Yes, like ringnecks. Oh, every bird you can think of. Ruffed grouse. All the ones you shoot.
Smooth grouse, rough grouse, sandpaper grit grouse. Okay, this next one, and this one we might go off on a little bit. I don't know. I feel like this one, I don't know. A lot of these seem to have been dependent on when in school you learned them, because when you're in first grade, say, versus when you're in high school, the amount of detail about some of these topics get condensed. Almost like, I don't know, if you were to make a movie version of Dune and leave a bunch of the book out.
And then inevitably add in things that have nothing to do with Dune.
Yes. So what was taught in school was Christopher Columbus discovered America.
That was definitely something that I knew as a fact as a child.
Yeah. And, I guess I don't know if they ever said where he geographically landed. I just kind of imagined he came across and landed somewhere in, like Maryland or Virginia.
He landed in Hispaniola, right?
Well, he landed with all the Indians in India. Okay, so the truth is, Native Americans were already living here, so he didn't discover it. But, I guess it wasn't really, nobody ever really said he discovered it, and the Native Americans were like, holy shit, we've been living on land, but he discovered it for Europe, right? Or the first European to discover this land.
Which was untrue.
Which is also untrue, but I don't know that anybody ever kind of was like, well, he discovered America, but the subtext to that is he discovered what he discovered, which was not actually North America. He never stepped foot in North America. But he discovered that South America or Central America for England or the Europeans, wherever the fuck, somewhere over there, across the pond, and they can stay over there. No, I'm just kidding. But I don't know that anyone was like, yeah, he came and told the Native Americans that they were actually living on land.
Sure. I still remember the controversy about whether or not the Vikings were here.
The first European to land in America is widely accepted to be the Viking explorer Leif Erikson.
Yes. And I've heard theories that the Irish were here too during the monastery expansion period. I don't know if there's any evidence of that, but people were theorizing that because the Irish were so ingrained with the Viking exploring that was going on.
Yep.
So it's not unlikely that there were Irish priests here.
And there was a lot of stuff also, and I didn't really put this one down because it kind of falls in the same one where a lot of people thought that Christopher Columbus was trying to prove that the world was round and not flat. And by the time he sailed, I don't know that there was really anybody convinced that the world was flat.
That was a myth created by Washington Irving. Who wrote Sleepy Hollow, the American author, because he wanted to...
You mean the American historian who dictated the tragedy at Sleepy Hollow?
Right, yeah.
And Ichabod Crane.
It was a fairy story to pump up Christopher Columbus and all that somehow turned into fact.
Well, and we talked about this other fact briefly on the show when we were talking about our favorite historical periods, and the Lewis and Clark expedition is one of mine, and a lot of authors, after they came back, couldn't really sell stories of the expedition because in terms of action and things happening, they played pretty much by the rules, wrote the book on, interpersonal relationships going across the country. Only one person died of appendicitis. Nobody was eaten by a bear or anything like that. So they pumped up Sacagawea's importance, and they even published novels about a weird love triangle involving, I think, both Lewis and Clark and Sacagawea. So, a lot of people, I think in that era, and of course, Lewis and Clark were hundreds of years beyond Christopher Columbus, but I feel like that was a fairly regular thing for people to do with explorers, was to further romanticize them or kind of embellish the story and then publish.
A lot of history before the modern era was only partially accurate, and you weren't supposed to take it as literally true. Livy is the same way. Herodotus is the same way in a lot of ways. There's parts of the story that are true and parts of the story that are entertainment and or propaganda, depending on who it is.
Yeah, and sometimes, like George Washington and the cherry tree is... what would you call it? Like an allegory? Or it's almost like a story from the Bible where it's not necessarily meant to be taken literal. Sorry, don't throw holy water on me. Stop it. but it's more of like a moralistic tale, more or less. But let's keep chomping through this. Speaking of chomping and how this one so far is not tasting as atrocious as I thought. It's probably the least offensive of the three.
It's not very good.
It's not very good.
We talked about it before. The Maduro cigar is like the dark roast of coffee.
Oh.
If you're going to make a cheap coffee, you make a dark roast. And if you make a cheap cigar, it better be a Maduro because you can hide a lot of things with it.
But you can't hide everything. And so what was taught in school was different regions of the tongue are responsible for different taste. Like different parts of your tongue have different taste receptors, like the tip for the sweet or, what have you. I remember studying like the tongue map. They had a tongue map.
Yes.
And it was not how to please a lady. It was which flavors you would pick up. And the tongue map is false. All the taste buds can taste all the things. Certain taste buds are better at tasting other things, but they're not all in one area or region of the tongue. They're all just spread across the tongue. So there are some whose maybe job is to taste more sweet things or they taste the sweet things better, but they're spread all over the tongue. They're not relegated to a certain gerrymandering district.
Interesting.
All right. The next one is Isaac Newton discovered gravity after an apple fell on his head.
Yes, I've heard this tale many times. I've seen it animated. And also, I learned from the British documentary Doctor Who that not only was Isaac Newton hit in the head by an apple, but he was also Latino before America was discovered.
Yes. And that Rosa Parks was the most pivotal event in the entirety of the universe.
Yes.
Okay. He saw an apple fall. We have his journal. So he saw an apple fall and started theorizing about gravity. It didn't hit him on the head, but I don't know, maybe he was on mescaline or something and sitting in the park and saw an apple fall and was like, whoa, dude. And started theorizing about that. So it wasn't quite as simple as bonk on the head. Why did that hit me on the head? Dirt, dirt, dirt. I mean, math was a thing and people knew there was forces there, but I don't know that anyone had sat down to calculate the force of gravity or its origins or things like that.
Yes.
I mean, before that apple fell on Isaac Newton, people were just floating around. It was chaos. All right. The next one, another great mind. What was taught was Albert Einstein failed at math and he was a terrible student. Have you heard that?
I have heard that he at times struggled with his studies.
All right. That is false. He was excellent in math. What he failed was he failed an entrance exam a few years before he even graduated high school. So he took this exam early. He failed it, but the test wasn't in his native language. But he did pass the math portion. I think it was in French, and so it was in a different language. It wasn't his native language, and he failed that. But people say, "Oh, well, Albert Einstein failed his classes." Is kind of an overgeneralization. He failed a test designed for people older than he currently was, with more schooling than he currently had, in a language he didn't speak. So it's a little different than saying he was bad.
That sounds pretty radically different, but what do I know?
Also, I don't care what they teach you in school. Albert Einstein was black.
Also, not a he.
Yes, a zem. Okay, the next thing that was taught is diamonds are made from pressurized coal. Did you hear that one?
Yes,
where coal
I have.
and diamonds are the same thing.
Yeah.
Well, the truth is both coal and diamonds are made from carbon, but isn't everything. That's what they say in Star Trek, carbon-based life forms, Captain. But the carbon that creates diamonds needs to be more pure and requires more heat and pressure than the carbon that makes coal. So presumably you won't find, if you dig down, supposedly you'd find coal first, right? And then deeper, more pressure, you'd find diamonds.
Sure, North Dakota should
allegedly,
have a ton of
allegedly.
diamonds.
I mean, I don't know anything about it. I'm sure there's some geologist somewhere who's ripping their hair out.
Sure. West Virginia.
Getting ready to compose
once they get deep enough in that mountain,
Yeah.
they're going to start finding diamonds eventually.
Go hit the magma. The next one, and I don't know if this was actually taught in school, but I've definitely seen like this motivational quote on, like middle-aged women's bathroom mirrors and stuff, or water bottles, Starbucks, plastic cups, I don't know. According to all known laws of aviation, a bee shouldn't be able to fly. Have you seen that or heard that?
I have never heard that.
Okay, some kind of motivational quote where it's like, according to all the laws of aviation, a bumblebee shouldn't be able to fly, but the bumblebee doesn't know that, and he flies anyway. And then everyone's like, rah, rah, I feel warm, get warm fuzzies in my, and I can do anything that I want.
A dangerous idea to have in your head. The rules don't apply to me. They apply to everybody else.
I'm a warm, fuzzy bumblebee. I can fly if I want to. Honeybees flap their wings very fast. So, and I added this next bit in, so if it's incorrect, somebody can correct me or not. But basically, in order to fly, you need speed and resistance, right? Like you need to create that kind of that force, whether it's through speed, the airfoil design of the wings on planes anyway, and stuff. So if you have smaller wings and a bigger body, you need to move your wings faster to generate the lift to go. So and actually the way that their wings are more efficient for what they do, which is carry large loads of honey and pollen around. Well, they don't carry the honey around, but the pollen, right? They go and load their legs up. You've seen those pictures.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. The next one, and I feel like Mike was there for this one. Witches in America were burned at the stake in the Salem witch trials.
Yes, I have. That is a urban legend. I know that one's not real, but I do remember that.
Okay. The French burned witches. And how do we know that they're a witch?
Because they floated to the top of the river when you threw them in it.
They float on water. Yes, and what else floats? Tiny pebbles? No, a duck. Ducks float. Okay, sorry. England hanged witches, as did the colonies. Now, there's one exception. There was one witch here in America that was not hanged, but also was not burned at the stake. Gill's quarry was simply pressed under large stones, which sounds like an absolutely terrible way to go.
That does not sound nice. I think the Germans might have burned them too. I don't know
who didn't the Germans burn?
That's true.
Okay, the next one.
And that one's going to be kept in.
The next one is Pluto is the 9th planet.
No, that's controversial because it was considered a planet, and now it's considered a orbital body or whatever.
No, I've got it all right here.
Microplanet.
In 2005, the International Astronomical Union discovered Eris, a space rock 27% larger than Pluto. So that posed a problem because Pluto was, up until then, a planet. So they needed to revisit their criteria and came to the conclusion that Eris and Pluto are both dwarf planets. And there are many more dwarf planets in our solar system that I just didn't have the time. Actually, I didn't have the ability to pronounce them out loud that are in our solar system that could potentially also fill in some of those gaps. So we could have a ton of planets depending on if you're including all dwarf planets or not.
That's news to me. I didn't know we had all these dwarves around.
Well, learning doesn't stop in the 90s, Mike.
Did for some of us.
Not for podcast hosts, it doesn't. Okay.
I like chocolate chip ice cream.
I like sex and money. Okay, so you probably remember this. That the Great Wall of China is the only man-made object visible from space.
I have heard this, and I also know that it's not true.
You've been up? You've seen it?
Yeah. I also know that it's not true, but yes, I've heard that.
It is or isn't true.
It is not true.
Depending. So given proper weather conditions, astronauts on the International Space Stations can see major cities, the pyramids, and some bridges. So only man-made object, no, but it can be seen from space depending on your orbit level. No man-made objects can be seen from the moon, with the caveat being, if you brought a telescope, I'm sure you could see some man-made objects and put it on the moon and look back at Earth. But otherwise, there's nothing visible man-made-wise to the naked eye from the moon. Okay, and I don't know if this was taught or if this is just from cartoons or how people draw them. But what was taught, I guess, is raindrops are teardrop shaped. So if you were to draw a raindrop on a sheet of paper, you'd do like a teardrop shape, right?
Yeah, that's how I would draw it.
They are hamburger bun or bean shaped when they are flying through the air. But if they become large enough to split, they briefly become teardrop shaped before turning back into a hamburger bun bean thing.
Okay.
Yeah. I remember this one quite a bit because we had some bleeders at school. Deoxygenated blood is blue. So they'd always say your veins are blue because there's no oxygen in your bloodstream, which of course there has to be or else you're dead. And that's why your veins are blue because that's the color of blood in your body. And then when it comes out and hits the air, it turns red.
I've heard a version of that, yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of the same thing as like nobody kind of collaborated, but everybody heard that Marilyn Manson had a rib removed so he could suck his own dick.
I've heard that one too.
So your veins are blue due to how you perceive light and how body tissues are absorbed and light through the body, stuff like that. So it has nothing to do with your blood being blue. Spock, on the other hand, is out of luck. That was green, not blue.
I was going to say that. I thought it was green, but I didn't want to show my true nerd colors.
Depends if the red alert lights are flashing or not.
No, I'm about halfway through.
I feel like it's gotten better. The first bit was not very good. It turned a little sweeter and a little less bitter. It could also be that this time we're coming with the reinforcements of beer.
Mine tastes like pure acetone right now.
Okay.
Like I'm drinking it out of a bottle. Not that I've ever actually done that, obviously, but it got better for a little bit.
Okay. Well, and I think you overtook me.
I'm a little bit ahead of you, not by much.
Because that last puff I just took now was a little worse than the one I just said. All right, the next one, I'm sure you've heard. It was popularized by Morgan Freeman. Humans only use 10% of their brains. Not by Morgan Freeman, but by a character, one of the movies, right? Like, hey, what if we used...
I've heard this myth before, yes.
So we use virtually every part of our brain. The brain takes up 3% of the body's mass, but 20% of the body's overall energy. Okay, taught bats are blind. Bats can actually see 3 times better than humans.
I did not know that.
And here's one for our buddy living in the Matrix. Swallowed gum stays in your body for 7 years.
I have heard that.
Gum can't be broken down by your stomach enzymes, but that means it passes through. It doesn't stay there. Much like corn. Although I've heard that the reason all the corn looks like you haven't chewed it, no matter how much you chew the corn, is because the actual corn kernel husks they're literally almost indestructible. So you squish all the good inner corn yumminess out of the little like kernel husk, and then those husks pass through and make it look like you didn't actually chew any of your corn. Not to rain on anybody's poop corn parade, but you know.
The next time I don't eat corn, I'll remember that.
Yes. The next thing is, I don't remember being taught this. Camels store water in their humps.
I remember a version of that, yes, but it was the fat in the hump, and then the fat gets converted into water, and more complicated.
The humps store fat. It's an additional food store for when they're traveling long distances, i.e. across a desert.
Which makes sense.
Yeah, but it doesn't necessarily convert to water. It's food, energy, that kind of thing.
Sure.
They would still, I guess, hydrate. And the next one is another animal one. Sharks can smell blood from miles away.
I have heard this one as well.
Okay, sharks. Some sharks, not all sharks. All sharks aren't created equal. They're all equal in the eyes of society. But some sharks have different skill sets and things of that nature. Some sharks can detect 1 drop of blood in an Olympic-sized swimming pool, which is pretty impressive. I mean, I don't even know how many gallons an Olympic-sized swimming pool is, but it largely depends on currents and water conditions, definitely not miles away.
Sure.
Out in the open ocean. So that was a contained Olympic-sized swimming pool, confined area for a shark, let's say. They could detect 1 drop of blood in that pool, but add in currents and other fish and organic matter and whatnot, and probably not.
Sure. So the phrase blood in the water might not be as dangerous as it appears to be at first sight.
I mean, certainly Steven Spielberg wants you to think, yes, dangerous.
Right. Well, if you're in a boat and you're running it, the shark knows that it can just come and bite half your boat off.
Eat through the boat.
Yeah, clearly.
Unless you have a bigger boat, in which case you're safe. The next one is Thomas Edison invented the light bulb. Have you heard that?
Yes, I have. That's what they call them, Edison light bulbs.
Yes. And I'm sure you've also heard that Elon Musk invented Tesla. Sorry, that's neither here nor there. There were existing light bulbs prior to Edison. His iteration was practical for home use, however. So he took the design, refined it, which made it, commercially available, let's say.
Was it Edison or one of his minions?
It didn't say. I'm guessing the latter.
Edison was a regular T.O. Holtzman, if you know what I mean.
Yes, that will be in a future episode. We'll talk about all of that fun stuff. Okay, the next one is humans have 5 senses. I'm sure you've heard that.
Yes, I have. That's why the 6th sense made so much sense.
Yes, until it didn't. What? What a twist.
I'm going to ruin the movie for you guys. Bruce Willis is dead.
He's dead. He's not with us. He's unalived. Sorry, Mike. You need to be a little more. You check your privilege, Mike. He's unalived.
He's unalived. Yes.
Okay. So we have sight, hearing, touch, taste, and smell. But there's also a sense of space, pain, temperature, and balance. Maybe some others. They've come a long way in the sense detection. There was a rumored 7th after the 6th sense came out. But now, my God, we've got a lot of them. It's too much for me to keep track of.
Weird.
Okay, the next one, and we'll know this, and for everybody south of the equator, I guess, you're out of luck. The North Star is the brightest star in the sky.
Yes.
False. It is the 50th brightest star in the sky.
Brighter than Polaris?
Dude, the sun is number 1. Come on.
And then the moon.
Then maybe Mars, depending on the season.
Then the International Space Station.
Yep. And then, was it Kim Jong-un or Un Jong Kim's mansion in North Korea?
Kim Jong-un, yes.
Okay, this next one, don't get mad at me, Mike. Don't get mad at me. The first Thanksgiving was a peaceful event, is what was taught in school.
It was. It was taught as a peaceful event, a coming together of the Smith family and we don't know their name because they all died family.
Pocahontas.
Oh my God. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Pocahontas came from Virginia up to Maine, Massachusetts area.
Yeah, and Elton John did the score. Who did the score for that? The first Thanksgiving?
I don't think it was Elton John.
Oh,
It might have
okay.
been. I don't remember. I've watched it in Disney World when I was there as a kid.
Okay. So I looked this up, and of course, on the site I looked it up was like, it was a terrible event, and it was to celebrate the whites massacring all these Native Americans. So I looked it up in a little more depth because if the peaceful event isn't true, the massacre thing certainly can't be true either. And it, surprise, surprise, was not true. Here is what I'm going to call the truth. It may or may not be if you're a historian of first Thanksgivings and things like that.
If you are a first Thanksgiving scholar, you are welcome to come on the show and correct the record.
Yes. I'm not a first Thanksgiving apologist, so I want to say that right up front. There was a massacre, but it was not necessarily whites versus Native Americans. Colonial men acting with now Native American allies defeated the Pequot tribe at the Battle of Mystic Fort. And that's Mistick, not like Mystic Lake Casino. This victory led to the end of the Pequot War, though it was largely a great loss of Native American lives, so it was a big loss of Native American lives. The Massachusetts governor, John Winthrop, declared an official day of Thanksgiving for the victory. So it was the colonials with some Native American allies. And I think if you get into a lot of the colonial American stuff, people nowadays like to simplify it as a white man versus Native people. But you have to understand that even though the Native Americans didn't necessarily have what we would call states, they certainly had territories, and there were a variety of different tribes who sometimes were at war and sometimes weren't at war with each other.
Some would go as far as to say that there were nations. The Pequot they had an organized system of government.
Oh, yeah.
Similar to our current system of government.
Or maybe even better.
Well, possibly better in certain ways. I'm
not trying to downplay any Native American tribes,
or
nations,
trying to explain,
whatever they would call themselves.
Yes.
I'm just saying, it would be the same as saying that, landing at Normandy was a big massacre of German people or Europeans. Like, let's say Europeans. But it was the Americans with the English fighting the Germans, and English and Germans are both Europeans. So it's kind of a similar sense, right?
Right.
I don't know. I'm not trying to make too much of it. I just when the one that I was looking up about this specific one with the Thanksgiving said, no, it was the white people and they massacred Native Americans and then they celebrated. That wasn't the truth either. So even though some of these things say things might be true, do a little bit extra research if you feel like, well, that just seems like the opposite of what they said was false. So let's find out maybe what the truth is. And I don't know. I wasn't there. So, and I don't know. I didn't check the numbers to see how many natives lost their lives versus colonial people.
Well, I'm here to tell you as a first witness. I was a witness to these events. And there's more than one bad person in the world. So,
what did Pocahontas cook?
Fry bread and Indian tacos.
Dude, fry bread is so good.
Indian tacos are good.
Okay. This one was taught in school. Most of your body heat loss is through your head.
I've heard this.
It can't be true because I'm bald and I'm always hot.
I've heard this, and I actually watched a video that debunked it.
Okay. The truth is legs and arms lose more than your head. But I would assume your torso, since that's where most heat is generated, would lose more than both of those. But what did your video say?
There's a guy that does research for hiking, long-distance hiking and backpacking, and he said that he did a test, and he said that your head loses proportionally more than its surface area, but it is like 2% more than the surface area of your head. So it feels like your head loses more heat by comparison to like your torso.
Okay.
Because obviously if your head is, let's say your head is 5% and it loses 7% of the heat, that means that you save energy somewhere else. And he also said that your genitalia was vastly worse because he did testing.
Hey, keep it covered.
Yes. Yeah. He said your genitalia is vastly worse than like your lower legs. Right.
I can see that.
Yeah, I can see that too.
All right, the next one, I'm sure everybody has heard if you're American. This is, I don't know if it's as American as it gets, but the next one is George Washington had wooden teeth. Have you heard that?
I have heard that, and I also know that he had teeth made of many things, including
like
human
Joseph
teeth.
and his Technicolor Dreamcoat.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had terrible teeth, but his fake teeth were likely made from human teeth, cow teeth, ivory, gold, and lead. Because that's a safe thing to put in your face orifice.
Makes everything taste a little bit sweeter.
This cigar might be better with a lead wrapper. Okay, the next one is a toilet flushes the opposite way in the southern hemisphere. Or if you're in the southern hemisphere, it flushes the opposite way up here in the north.
I have heard that. I've heard that many times.
It is false, though. It's the Coriolis effect, and that makes hurricanes and tornadoes spin counterclockwise in the northern hemisphere and clockwise in the southern hemisphere. Doesn't affect small amounts of water, such as the amounts of water that are found in your average toilet bowl. The toilet can flush whichever way the forces inside the toilet force the water to go. So if the manufacturer decided they wanted their water to flush the opposite way of what the other toilets in the hemisphere flush, they could simply make it flush the opposite way. If you have a turd stuck on there that clings up, it could redirect the water. So there's lots of things that could do that. I would be curious, though. Mike is loving his cigar. I would be curious if you had like a tornado or hurricane that crossed the hemisphere, would it shift directions? Or can they not cross the hemisphere? Is that like all I have to do if I'm being chased by a tornado is hit the hemisphere line and then I'm safe?
like a vampire?
It sounds like it's a...
You cross the threshold to the house and then it can't enter?
Yeah, it sounds like it's like a dipshit question, but like seriously, I'm curious.
I'm guessing that if it's a big enough hurricane, there's nothing that's going to stop that beast from moving around.
The Coriolis effect, man. It says it right here.
So if a hurricane gets down by the equator, will it just go around and around the equator forever?
Well, wouldn't it just sputter out? Because like it'd have to switch direction and then it would stall out, wouldn't it?
Or it would gain speed like a half pipe.
Man, I don't know. Coming on a future episode of Nice Ashes, we're going to travel to the equator and try and outrun some hurricanes and tornadoes.
Yep.
All right. Last page. Mike, we've got enough cigar to do this. What's taught is your hair and fingernails keep growing after you die.
I hope what happens after I die is I stop tasting this fucking cigar.
It is getting downright rancid.
This is worse than the other ones. It started off fine.
Yeah. The first half was tolerable.
It was.
This half, well, I don't know, the last third of this thing.
It is not good. I do not recommend. I can already tell you guys.
No.
I do not recommend.
I don't recommend any of these. The game Baccarats. I don't know if the other ones are good. I can't believe any of these ones that we smoked got a 91 or whatever it got.
I can't believe any of these got a star.
I can't believe anyone bothered
points.
I can't believe anyone bothered to even rate these.
I would rate it 1 star to warn others.
Could I do half a star?
Exactly.
A quarter star?
Yeah, negative demerits. I have heard this. I've also been told that it was because your skin shrinks, so it looks like it grow.
Yes. Your skin dries out and contracts, making everything else appear longer. Not everything else, mind you, but your hair and nails. Goldfish have 3-second memories.
I've heard that before. I know that's also a lie.
Yep. Do you know how long they can remember things?
No, I don't.
I just read it, but I can't remember. No, 12 days. 12 days.
They seem to have a memory longer than that.
Longer than 12?
Yeah. People seem to claim that they get recognized by their fish, and they definitely have behavior patterns.
Yeah, but if you see them once every 12 days, they would remember you.
I suppose. That's also true. You're not leaving your goldfish alone for 13 days.
Okay. Note to self, do not buy Mike fish for a present.
I do not want fish for sure.
Yes. The next one is pilgrims only wore black clothing.
I have heard that, and everybody knows the picture, but it's black and white. They have black and white and silver buckles, right?
It's black and white, but they wore every color clothing, but for special events and Sundays, they would wear black. So getting your picture taken in those days would be a special event. So you'd wear your finest clothes, which would be black.
Right.
As a pilgrim. And even black and white, if everybody's not wearing black, you would see different, shades of gray and black. And maybe not 50 shades of gray, but you'd see a few shades of gray. But they would wear every color, just black was their formal wear. Okay, how about the food pyramid is the best way to eat food?
Oh my God. I remember having to learn that thing, and everybody knows that's a lie.
Yeah, they replaced it now with My Plate, which sounds less fun than food pyramid, because food pyramid implied that there were at least 2 more sides of foodie goodness that they were keeping secret from you. I guess pyramid is a 3-dimensional shape instead of a food triangle. Anyway, but it's a better guide to a healthy, balanced meal. The My Plate stuff, you can look it up on the government website, so it has to be true and good for you.
Is that the same government that allowed schools to classify pizza as a vegetable because it has tomato sauce on it?
It is. Well, and a tomato isn't even a vegetable.
Right. It is not.
So, what? Pizza's a fruit plate?
I guess so.
Okay. There's a missing link in evolution. Have you heard that one, Mike?
I've heard the phrase.
Scientifically, Mike.
Yeah, I've heard the phrase. I've heard somebody being called the missing link many times.
Yes. In 2009, scientists discovered Ida, a fossil now considered to be the link between humans and apes.
A-link. A-link. It'll never be enough, Nate.
Well,
It'll never be enough.
it doesn't have to be enough, really. I mean, really, does it have to be enough? Can't you just have faith, Mike?
You have to have faith of the heart.
Here we go. Anything to prevent us from taking another puff off of this rancid stick.
Once we get done with your list, I'm pretty sure we're done.
I think,
with the
yeah.
cigar.
All right, this is the last one. This one was actually fairly interesting to me. I don't know if it'll be interesting to you. Should we find out?
Yeah, I suppose so.
Okay.
I suppose so.
Okay. The world map on the classroom wall is accurate, where Greenland is 57 times bigger than everything else.
No, it's not, because they stretch it because it's not in a globe shape. It's flat.
All right. So there are, that's what's called the Mercator projection map. There's a lot of different maps. And so the Mercator projection map is the one that shows Greenland and Europe to be deceptively large while showing Africa to be smaller than it actually is. There's a lot of different maps. There's at least 9 others. And my favorite is the Robinson map. So,
Like Robinson Crusoe.
yep, that's the one. He sailed there and made that map.
There we go.
There we go.
Daniel Defoe made it back in the.
He did.
Right before or after Mall Flanders.
Man, doesn't matter. Just have faith, Mike. Just have faith that Robinson Crusoe knew what he was doing.
No,
All right. This stick is absolutely terrible.
it's vile.
Absolutely
It
terrible.
is vile. We finished the other 2.
We did.
We did, and I'm gonna take one more puff.
Don't. He did it. We have a good, 2.5 inches left of this one. And I know the other one we put out about half an inch or an inch.
My eye is twitching.
Yep. This one's terrible.
It is possibly the worst cigar I've ever had. That's not true, because the Cult Blood Red Moon has to be the worst cigar I've ever had, because it was bad from the start.
It was bad from the start. This one's pretty not good. Pretty not good. All right. Thanks for listening. Don't ever buy a Baccarat the Game.
Be safe, have fun.